The rain in Portland has a way of washing the world clean, turning the gray streets into glistening ribbons of asphalt and blurring the edges of the city into a soft watercolor painting. I used to love it. I'd sit by the large window of our apartment, a mug of tea warming my hands, and watch my daughter, Maya, build Lego castles on the rug, her bright blonde hair a tiny sun in the gloom. That afternoon was no different. The sky wept, Mia hummed a tune from her favorite cartoon, and I was sketching a whimsical forest creature for a children's book, lost in the familiar comfort of my life. Then my phone buzzed. It was a single text message from Christopher, my husband of 9 years, the man I'd built my world around. I'm in Barcelona. I've moved here with Claire. The apartment is paid for the month. I'll be in touch about the divorce. The words didn't register at first. They felt like a language I didn't speak. Barcelona, as in Spain. Claire, his perky 20-something assistant who always laughed a little too loudly at his jokes. I read the message again. And again. The pencil slipped from my fingers, leaving a dark gray smudge across the cheerful face of the squirrel I was drawing. My first thought, absurdly, was about the groceries. We needed milk. I'd planned to make his favorite lasagna for dinner. It was a stupid, mundane thought in the face of such a cataclysmic announcement, but my brain couldn't process the larger implications. It was grasping for the familiar, for the life I had just 5 minutes ago. Mommy, look. Mia held up a lopsided tower of red and blue blocks. It's a castle for you. I forced a smile, my lips feeling stiff and foreign. It's beautiful, sweetie. The most beautiful castle in all of Portland. My hands were trembling as I dialed his number. It went straight to voicemail. His voice, so full of warmth and false sincerity, filled my ear. Hey, you've reached Chris. Leave a message. I hung up without speaking. I tried again. Voicemail, a cold dread, heavy and suffocating, began to settle in my chest. This wasn't a joke. I sank onto the sofa, the plush cushions offering no comfort. 9 years. We'd been together for 9 years. I met him in my final year of design school, a rising star in the tech world with a charming smile and a 5-year plan. I was going to be a graphic designer for a top firm. I had ambitions, a portfolio that glowed with promise, but I fell in love. When Mia came along, he decided, and I agreed, that it made more sense for me to freelance from home. The hours were more flexible. It was better for Maya, he'd said. My career took a back seat, then it moved into the trunk, and eventually it was left on the side of the road somewhere as I focused all my energy on being the perfect wife and mother, on supporting his dream. His dream became our dream. Or so I thought. The second buzz from my phone was a notification from my banking app, an alert. Your checking account balance is low. Low. That couldn't be right. I just deposited a check from a freelance gig last week. We had savings, a lot of savings at $145,000 tucked away, a nest egg we'd painstakingly built. It was our future, our security, Mia's college fund. I opened the app, my heart hammering against my ribs. The screen loaded, and the numbers that appeared felt like a punch to the gut. Checking account, 4012.37 savings, zeros account dollars, and I blinked, shaking my head as if to clear a fog. It had to be an error, a glitch in the system. I navigated to the transaction history, my thumb swiping frantically across the screen, and there it was. A single, colossal withdrawal from our joint savings account, where transfer to La Caxa Bank, Barcelona, Spain, amounted $145,000 unhand dated yesterday. He had emptied everything, every last cent. He had drained our entire shared life and funneled it to Spain. I looked at the checking account balance again, $400,037. Our Rent, a staggering $2,400, was due in 3 days. The room started to spin. The soft patter of the rain against the window pane suddenly sounded like mocking laughter. He hadn't just left me. He had financially executed me. He had left me and his 5-year-old daughter with less than a fifth of what we needed to keep a roof over our heads for the next month. It wasn't just a betrayal. It was a calculated act of cruelty designed to leave me utterly destitute and powerless. "Mommy, are you okay?" Mia's small voice cut through the roaring in my ears. She was standing in front of me, her brow furrowed with a concern no 5-year-old should ever have to feel. I pulled her into my arms, burying my face in her hair, inhaling the sweet, familiar scent of her shampoo. I held onto her like a life raft, the only solid thing in my capsized world. In that moment, as I held my daughter, the shock began to recede, replaced by something else. Something hot and sharp and terrifyingly clear. It was rage, a pure, unadulterated fury that burned away the tears before they could even form. He had started a war. He just didn't know I was the kind of woman who would burn the whole world down to protect her child. The first few hours were a blur of frantic, useless activity. I called the bank, my voice cracking, as I explained the situation to a dispassionate customer service representative named Brenda. She informed me, in a monotone that scraped against my raw nerves, that since it was a joint account, Christopher had every legal right to withdraw the funds. "There's nothing we can do, ma'am." She chirped the ma'am, feeling less like a courtesy and more like a dismissal. I hung up the phone feeling slick with sweat in my hand. I paced the apartment, the comfortable space now feeling like a cage. Every object was a monument to our shared life, a life that was now a lie. The ridiculous, abstract painting he'd bought on our trip to Santa Fe, the worn leather armchair where he used to read me bedtime stories, the row of cookbooks I'd used to prepare thousands of meals for him. It was all a theatrical set for a play where only one of the actors knew the script. Hindsight is a cruel, illuminating thing. The signs were there, flashing like noon warnings. I had been too blind, too trusting to see the late nights at the office that had become more frequent over the past 6 months. The hushed phone calls he'd take on the balcony, the way he'd started password, protecting his laptop, claiming it was a new company security policy, the vague credit card charges, expensive dinners I was never invited to, a hotel bill from a business trip in our own city, and the biggest red flag of all, the sale of our house. 6 months ago, he had convinced me to sell the small house we owned, the one with the garden where I'd planned to teach Mia how to grow tomatoes. He'd presented spreadsheets and market projections, spinning a tale of a brilliant investment opportunity in a tech startup that would double our money in a year. "It's a sure thing, Lena," he'd said, his eyes sparkling with an excitement I mistaken for ambition. "This is for us, for Mia's future." I trusted him. I signed the papers. The startup folded 3 months later, and he told me with a theatrical sigh that our investment was gone. All of it. Now, I saw the truth. There was no failed investment. There was only the funding for his new life. He had liquidated our biggest asset, the very foundation of our family, to pave his escape route to Barcelona with his 20-something parasite. My phone rang, and his mother's name, Margaret, flashed on the screen. For a wild, hopeful second, I thought she was calling to offer support, to tell me this was all a terrible misunderstanding. I was a fool. "Alina," she began, her voice dripping with a cloying, false sympathy that made my skin crawl. "Christopher called me. I just want you to know that. Well, we all saw this coming." "You what?" I gasped, clutching the phone tighter. "You've just been so distant lately." She continued, her voice hardening. So wrapped up in your little drawings. A man like my son, a man with his drive, needs a partner who is present. He needs support, not someone with their head in the clouds. The audacity of it stole my breath. She was blaming me. They had orchestrated this entire narrative, painting me as the neglectful, artsy wife who had driven her perfect son into the arms of another woman. This wasn't just a breakup, it was a character assassination, a meticulously planned conspiracy to absolve him of all guilt. He drained our bank accounts, Margaret, I said, my voice dangerously low. He left his daughter with $400. There are two sides to every story, dear, she sniffed. Christopher felt he was simply taking what he had earned. He has to start a new life, after all. The line went dead, but her words hung in the air like toxic smoke. We all saw this coming. He was simply taking what he had earned. It was a confession. She was in on it. This was a family affair. A cold, methodical calm began to settle over my fury. This was a chess game, and I had just realized I was a player, not just a pawn to be sacrificed. I needed information. I needed leverage. My mind raced. Who would know something? Sam, Christopher's best friend and former colleague. They'd been inseparable since college. I found his number and called, my heart pounding a nervous rhythm against my ribs. Lena, what's up? He answered, his voice wary. I didn't waste time with pleasantries. Sam, did you know? Did you know Chris was planning to leave? There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Oh, man. Lena. He sighed, a heavy, guilt-ridden sound. Look, he put me in a terrible position. He told me a few weeks ago. Swore me to secrecy. I told him he was being an idiot, a monster. But you didn't tell me. I finished for him, the words tasting like ash. You let him do this to me and Maya. He told me he had a plan. Sam stammered, his words tumbling out in a rush. He said you guys had an arrangement that you were separating amicably. He said he was leaving you well provided for. He lied to me, Lena. I swear, if I'd known he was going to clean you out. His words were a weak apology, but they contained a crucial piece of information. But Christopher had a plan. He had been planning this for weeks, maybe months. This wasn't a spontaneous act of passion. It was a premeditated attack. And one more thing Sam said stuck with me. He quit his job 2 weeks ago, Lena. He cashed out his 401k. Said he was taking a sabbatical before starting his next chapter. He'd quit his job. He had no income. He had methodically severed every tie to his life here, leaving me to deal with the fallout. The cold calculation of it was breathtaking. The next day, a courier delivered a thick manila envelope. Inside were the divorce papers, already signed by Christopher, and a separate document, a legal declaration, in which he voluntarily relinquished his parental rights to Mia. He was erasing us. He wasn't just leaving. He was trying to legally obliterate his connection to his own daughter to free himself of any future financial or emotional responsibility. The cruelty was bottomless. I was about to throw the envelope against the wall when something slipped out from between the pages. It was a greeting card, a generic thinking of you card with a picture of a sunset on the front. Inside, in Margaret's spidery handwriting, was a note. Dearest Chris, so thrilled for your new chapter. This should cover deposit on the Barcelona flat. We'll handle Alina. Just focus on your happiness. All my love, Mom. Tucked inside the card was a receipt, a carbon copy of a cashier's check for $10,000, dated 3 weeks ago, made out to Christopher Harper. This was it. This was proof. Proof that his mother wasn't just a passive supporter. She was an active accomplice. She had financed the very apartment where he was now living with his mistress. They had sent it to me by mistake. A fatal, glorious mistake. I stared at the card, a slow, predatory smile spreading across my face for the first time in 48 hours. They thought they were so clever. They thought they had planned the perfect crime, but they were sloppy and they had severely, profoundly underestimated me. I wasn't a distraught, abandoned wife anymore. I was a woman with a mission, and I had my first piece of evidence. Game on. Finding a lawyer with only $412 to my name felt like trying to climb Mount Everest in flip-flops. The first 3 offices I called politely turned me away after hearing the words, "No retainer." I was beginning to despair when I stumbled upon a legal aid website that listed lawyers who offered free initial consultations. That's how I found Anna Gwynn. Her office wasn't in a gleaming downtown skyscraper. It was a small, cluttered space above a bakery, smelling faintly of sugar and yeast. Anna herself was a whirlwind of energy, a petite woman with a sharp, intelligent gaze, and a nonsense attitude that I found instantly reassuring. I laid out the whole sordid story, my voice steady as I detailed the drained accounts, the call with Margaret, the divorce papers, and finally, the crown jeweled, the greeting card, and the check receipt. I slid it across the desk to her. She picked it up, her eyes scanning the contents. A slow, appreciative smile spread across her face. "Oh, Margaret," she murmured. "You beautiful, stupid woman." She looked up at me, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of something beyond professional interest in her eyes. It was the thrill of the hunt. "Okay, Alina," she said, leaning forward. "Here's the situation. What Christopher did with the joint account isn't strictly illegal. It's what we lawyers call dissipation of marital assets, and it's a scumbag move, but not a criminal one. However," she held up a finger, "a family court judge will absolutely crucify him for it, leaving his child with no means of support while he jets off to Europe with his girlfriend. That's a very, very bad look." She explained the strategy. "We would file an emergency motion for temporary spousal and child support. We'd request an ex parte order, which meant we could go before a judge without Christopher being present, given the circumstances. We'll argue that he has created an immediate and irreparable harm to the child." Anna explained, the legal jargon suddenly sounding like the most beautiful poetry. "And we will ask the judge to freeze any and all assets he may still have in the United States. We'll use this card from Mommy Dearest as evidence of a conspiracy to hide marital funds." For the first time in days, a sliver of hope pierced through my despair. I had an ally. I had a plan. While Anna prepared the legal filings, I became a detective in my own life. I needed more ammunition. I thought about what Sam had said, that Christopher had quit his job. On a hunch, I went to his now abandoned home office. He had taken his personal laptop, but he'd left the old family desktop computer. It was slow and ancient, but it was a window into his digital life. I spent hours sifting through old files, browser histories, and cached pages. Most of it was junk. Then I found it. In his email drafts folder was an unsent message addressed to Claire. It was a love letter filled with nauseating prose about their destiny and their new life under the Spanish sun. But buried within the romantic drivel was a golden nugget of information. Can't wait for you to be here. The team at Omnicorp Barcelona is so excited to have me on board. The signing bonus alone will set us up beautifully until my first commission checks start rolling in. Omnicorp, a multinational tech firm with a major office in Barcelona. He hadn't just moved there on a whim. He had a job lined up. A high-paying one by the sounds of it. He hadn't told me, of course. He'd let me believe he was unemployed, probably to avoid paying a single cent in child support. I printed the email, the ink on the page feeling like a small victory. But the real breakthrough came from a place I almost didn't look. For years, Christopher had paid for a cloud storage subscription, a digital attic where we stored everything from family photos and tax documents to old work files. I still had the password saved in my browser. My heart pounded as I logged in. I clicked through folders of Maya's baby pictures, of our vacations, of a life that now seemed like a fiction. I was about to give up when I saw a folder I didn't recognize. It was titled simply Contingency. My blood ran cold. I clicked it open. Inside were two documents. The first was a PDF labeled Parenting Plan. It wasn't a legal document. It was a strategy guide. A cold, clinical, step-by-step plan co-authored by Christopher and his mother on how to gain sole custody of Maya. It detailed a horrifying strategy to use my history of postpartum depression against me. I had struggled in the months after Mia was born, a darkness that had been terrifying and isolating. I had sought therapy, worked through it, and recovered. I had thought it was a private battle, but they had been taking notes. The document outlined how they would provoke me, document my emotional responses, and twist them into evidence of me being an unstable, unfit mother. There were bullet points about triggering her anxiety and documenting her erratic behavior. Margaret was tasked with calling social services to file anonymous concerns. They were planning to paint me as mentally ill to steal my child. I felt physically sick. The sheer premeditated evil of it was staggering. This wasn't just about money or another woman. This was about destroying me completely. The second document was a spreadsheet. It was a detailed list of financial transactions, but the numbers didn't match any of our known accounts. At the top of the spreadsheet was the name of a bank I'd never heard of and an account number. I Googled the bank's name. Cayman Islands. He had a secret offshore account. The spreadsheet detailed a series of transfers over the last year, siphoning money from his bonuses and cashing out stock options. The current balance listed at the bottom of the page made me gasp. $45. It was his emergency fund. His get out of jail free card. He hadn't just left me with nothing. He had a hidden stash of cash, a safety net he had meticulously built while our joint savings account was supposedly for our future. I sat there surrounded by the printouts. The email, the parenting plan, the offshore account details, and I felt a profound shift within me. The rage and the grief were still there, but they had been forged into something harder, sharper. They had been forged into steel. He thought he was playing chess, but he didn't realize I had just found his king, his queen, and all of his hidden pieces, and I was about to wipe the board clean. A few days later, my phone rang with an unknown number. The caller ID showed a Spanish country code. My stomach clenched. I expected to be Christopher, maybe calling to gloat or to issue some new demand. I let it go to voicemail. A minute later, a text message appeared. Alina, it's Claire. Please, we need to talk. It's about Christopher. He's doing it to me too. I stared at the message, my mind reeling. Claire, his lover. The woman who had helped him destroy my life was now reaching out to me. It had to be a trap, a trick orchestrated by Christopher and his mother to gather more ammunition against me. My first instinct was to block the number, to tell Anna and let the lawyers handle it. But curiosity and a strange, cold intuition got the better of me. What could she possibly mean? He's doing it to me too. I took a deep breath and called the number back. A shaky, tearful voice answered on the first ring. Alina, thank you for calling back. Aina, I didn't know who else to turn to. What do you want, Claire? I asked, my voice flat and devoid of emotion. He lied to me, she sobbed. He told me you two were separating. that it was all mutual. He said you were a career-obsessed woman who didn't love him anymore. He painted this picture of himself as a victim, and you believed him. I stated, not a question. I was stupid, she admitted, her voice thick with shame. I was in love, or I thought I was. He promised me a new life, a partnership. He convinced me to liquidate my own investments, over $200,000 and I'd inherited. He said we would pool our resources, that he would invest it for us in a high-yield European fund. I closed my eyes, the pieces clicking into place with a sickening finality. Of course, it wasn't just my money he was after. He was a predator, and I was just his first victim. Let me guess, I said, a grim certainty washing over me. The money is gone. He put it all in an account under his name only. She choked out. For tax purposes, he said. Now he's telling me it's tied up, that there are market fluctuations. It's all lies. He's controlling me with it. He's got me trapped here. I found a statement for another account, one in the Cayman Islands. He's hiding money from everyone, Elena. From you, from me. My hand tightened around the printout of the Cayman account that was sitting on my desk. I know, I said softly. There was a moment of silence on the line. You're not surprised? She whispered. Not anymore. Claire took a shuddering breath. I want to help you, she said, her voice gaining a sliver of strength. I want to help myself. I have everything. Bank statements for the account with my money, emails he sent me detailing his plans to invest it, even recordings of our conversations where he talks about the plan for Mia, about his mother's involvement. He likes to brag about how clever he is. My heart stopped. Recordings. If I give it all to you, she said, her voice dropping to a desperate whisper. Can you? Can your lawyer make sure I'm protected? That I'm treated as a witness, not an accomplice? I'll testify. I'll do whatever it takes to burn him to the ground. An alliance. An unholy, unthinkable alliance between the wife and the mistress. It was a plot twist I never saw coming. He had tried to pit us against each other, to use one to discard the other. He never imagined that we would find common ground in our shared betrayal. Send me everything you have. Claire, I said, my voice is cold and hard as a diamond. Send it all to my lawyer, and I'll make sure you get immunity. He's not just going to lose his money. He's going to lose everything. That night, a torrent of information flooded Anna's inbox. Bank statements confirming the existence of another secret account holding over $200,000 of Claire's money. Email chains where Christopher boasted to Claire about his foolproof plan to leave me destitute and take Mia. And the audio files, hours of them. We listened as Christopher and his mother laughed about my postpartum depression. We listened as he coached Claire on what to say if I ever contacted her. We listened as he laid out his entire fraudulent enterprise in his own arrogant, self-assured voice. It was a complete confession, a gift-wrapped case tied with a bow of his own making. The day of the emergency hearing, the courtroom was quiet and formal. I sat beside Anna, my hands clasped tightly in my lap to stop them from shaking. Christopher wasn't there, of course. He was in Barcelona, oblivious. His lawyer, a slick man in an expensive suit, was there to represent him, armed with the divorce papers and the relinquishment of parental rights, ready to argue that his client had already severed ties and had no further obligations. He looked smug, confident. He had no idea the tidal wave that was about to hit him. The judge, a stern-looking woman named Judge Davies, reviewed our initial filing with a frown. A serious accusation, Ms. Gwynn, dissipation of marital assets, and endangering the welfare of a child. Christopher's lawyer stood up. Your Honor. Honor, my client has been more than generous. He left Ms. Harper the marital apartment fully paid for the month. Anna rose to her feet, a stack of papers in her hand. Your Honor, a generous is not the word I would use to describe a man who drains a six-figure savings account and leaves his 5-year-old child with $400 to live on. She started methodically, clinically. She presented the bank statements showing that a $145,000 wire transfer. Then she presented the greeting card from Margaret, proof of her complicity. The lawyer's smug expression began to falter. Furthermore, Anna continued, her voice ringing with authority, Mr. Harper has mizzled this court. He claims to be unemployed, but we have evidence he began a new, lucrative position with Anacorp in Barcelona 2 weeks ago. She submitted the printed email draft. The lawyer's face went pale. And while Mr. Harper was liquidating his marital assets, Anna's voice dropped, becoming grave. He was carefully curating his own personal safety net. She presented the details of the Cayman Islands account with its $45,000 balance. The judge's eyes narrowed, but Anna had saved the best for last. Your Honor, she said, her voice filled with quiet outrage. This was never just about money. It was about a cruel and calculated plan to psychologically torture and discredit my client in order to steal her child. She produced the parenting plan as she read excerpts aloud. The chilling phrases about triggering her anxiety and documenting erratic behavior. A shocked silence fell over the courtroom. Judge Davies took off her glasses, her expression one of utter disgust. Christopher's lawyer looked like he wanted the floor to swallow him whole. And lest there be any doubt about the architects of this monstrous plan, Anna said, her eyes flashing, we have this. She played the audio recordings. The sound of Christopher's and Margaret's voices filled the room, their laughter echoing grotesquely as they mocked my mental health struggles. The judge listened, her face a mask of stone. When the recording finished, she looked at Christopher's lawyer, her eyes blazing with a cold fire I would not have wanted to be on the receiving end of. Counselor, she said, her voice dangerously quiet. Do you have anything at all to say in response to this? This despicable evidence. The lawyer opened his mouth, then closed it. He sank back into his chair, utterly defeated. The verdict was swift and brutal. Judge Davies granted every single one of our requests. She issued an immediate order to freeze all of Christopher's known assets, including the Cayman account and the account containing Claire's money, pending a full forensic audit. She awarded me emergency spousal and child support to be paid directly from the frozen funds. She granted me sole temporary custody of Maya, effective immediately. And she ruled that Christopher was to have no contact with his daughter, except for supervised visits pending a full psychological evaluation. She voided his relinquishment of parental rights, stating, "This court will not allow a man to simply discard his child to avoid his financial and moral responsibilities." As we walked out of the courthouse, the Portland rain had stopped and the sun was breaking through the clouds. I took a deep breath of the clean, rain-washed air, and for the first time in what felt like a lifetime, I felt like I could breathe again. It wasn't over. But I had won the first battle, and Christopher had no idea that his world was about to come crashing down. The fallout from the judge's ruling was immediate. The court-appointed forensic accountant moved with lightning speed, freezing the accounts before Christopher even knew what had happened. His credit cards were declined. His access to the hundreds of thousands of dollars he had stolen was cut off. I could almost picture the panic and confusion on his face 6,000 miles away in his sun-drenched Spanish paradise. But the most spectacular implosion came from an unexpected source, his own mother. Margaret, upon learning that her son's assets were frozen and that her part in the conspiracy had been exposed in court, went into a tailspin. Her carefully constructed world of suburban prestige was crumbling. But instead of contrition, she chose escalation. Her next move was born of pure, vindictive rage, and it was the single stupidest thing she could have possibly done. One evening, I received an email forwarded from Anna. It was from the head of human resources at Omnicorp's European division. It was a termination letter. Christopher's termination letter. Attached was a series of emails, supposedly from my account, that had been sent to Christopher's new boss. They were vile, unhinged rants filled with false accusations about Christopher being a drug addict, a corporate spy, and mentally unstable. They were designed to destroy his new career, a scorched earth tactic. The problem was, I didn't write them. My blood ran cold as I read them. It was identity theft. Someone had spoofed my email address or hacked my account to frame me and get him fired. And I had a very good idea who. Before I could even process the shock, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. It was Christopher. I know you sent those emails, you psycho. You couldn't just take the money. You had to ruin my life. Well, Mom just confessed everything. Check your email. My heart leaped into my throat. I opened my inbox, and there it was, an email from Christopher. The subject line was just one word proof. Attached was a screenshot of a text message exchange between him and Margaret. Christopher, they froze the accounts. All of them. My job just called. They're suspending me pending an investigation. Did you say something to Elena? Margaret, I handled it. He won't be a problem for you anymore. I sent some emails from her account to his new boss. Let's see how he likes being unemployed in a foreign country. Christopher Makhar. What did you do? You impersonated her. That's a crime. You've ruined everything. Margaret, I was trying to protect you. She was going to bleed you dry. It was all there in black and white. A full confession. Margaret, in her desperate, idiotic attempt to protect her son, had not only committed a serious federal crime, but she had also given me the evidence to prove it. Christopher, in his own fit of rage against his mother, had served it to me on a silver platter. The sheer, delicious irony of it was almost too much to bear. Their toxic, co-dependent relationship had finally imploded, and I was standing in the perfect spot to watch the fireworks. I immediately forwarded the screenshot to Anna. Her reply came back in minutes. Oh, this is beautiful, she wrote. This goes beyond family court. This is criminal. Identity theft, wire fraud. Margaret is in a world of trouble. The final act played out with a grim inevitability. Armed with the text messages, Anna contacted the district attorney's office. An investigation was launched. Faced with irrefutable evidence, Margaret was charged with identity fraud. Carefully created reputation in her community was annihilated overnight. Meanwhile, Christopher's life in Barcelona was a nightmare of his own making. With no access to funds and now jobless, he was trapped. Claire, granted immunity and having cooperated fully, left him. She took the last of her available cash and flew back to the States, leaving him alone in an apartment he could no longer afford. Eventually, he had to crawl back to the U.S. to face the music. He was met at the airport not by his loving mother, but by a process server with a summons for his next court date. The forensic audit had uncovered even more hidden assets, a small stock portfolio, another undeclared retirement account. The judge in our divorce case was not amused. The final divorce decree was a masterpiece of legal retribution. I was awarded 75% of all marital assets, including the contents of all his secret accounts, as punitive damages for his fraud and dissipation. I was granted sole physical and legal custody of Mia. He was allowed supervised visitation twice a month, contingent on him completing a psychological evaluation and an anger management course. His child support payments were calculated based on the salary of the job he had lost, a permanent reminder of his own folly. Margaret pleaded guilty to a lesser charge to avoid jail time, but was sentenced to 2 years of probation, a hefty fine, and community service. Her name was Mud. Christopher, stripped of his money, his career, and his family, became a ghost. He attended the first few super visits with Maya, a hollowed-out man who couldn't even look his daughter in the eye. Maya, in her innocent wisdom, seemed to barely recognize this sad, defeated stranger. After a while, he just stopped showing up. He faded from our lives, not with a bang, but with a pathetic, whimpering fizzle. With the money I recovered, I didn't buy a fancy car or designer clothes. I bought a home, a small 2-bedroom condo in a quiet neighborhood with good schools. It had a little balcony where I put out pots and planted tomatoes, just like I had always wanted. I invested the rest, creating a secure future for me and my daughter, a future built not on a man's promises, but on my own strength. My freelance illustration career took off. The story of what I had been through and how I had fought back had given my art a new depth, a new voice. I poured all my pain, my anger, and my ultimate triumph onto the page. I was no longer just drawing whimsical forest creatures. I was drawing fierce princesses who rescued themselves, clever queens who outsmarted dragons, and strong mothers who would move mountains for their children. Sometimes on rainy Portland afternoons, I sit by New Window in New Home and watch Mia playing. She's a happy, resilient, brilliant little girl, untouched by the darkness that almost consumed us. I look at her and I look at the life I have built for us from the ashes of betrayal, and I feel a profound sense of peace. He thought he was leaving me in ruins. He didn't understand. A woman, a mother, is not a house you can burn down. She is the earth itself. You can scorch her, you can scar her, but you can never, ever destroy her. From the ashes, she will always, always grow back stronger